Does the motion be agreed to? Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, the Labour opposition will support this bill to the Select Committee, but will not necessarily support it any further unless there are some amendments made to it. And there are three areas that I do want to discuss. And the first is the very broad nature of Clause 4, the circumstances clause, and effectively the operative clause of this bill. Clause 5, new section 4 of the legislation, because in my opinion, the rights to overturn the wishes of donors here are much more than are necessary, and there are not the protections, for example, that the Select Committee decided were appropriate with the Methodist legislation which became before the House not very long ago. And I say to the people who drafted the bill that I think it is poor drafting for them to not take into account the view of the House as to the what was seen to be an excessively liberal nature of the previous bill, and not to take account of that in the drafting of this legislation, and so I'm concerned about that, and there's been a degree of liberty taken, I think, or an attempt to take a liberty with the House beyond that. Which we've shown by way of the amendment of the Methodist bill in the fairly recent past, and I think a better approach would have been to take account of that, and then things would have probably gone more smoothly. The second point I'd like to make is really one of politeness, and while with a local bill there is a requirement that bills come through the local member, there is not such a requirement for private bills. But, Mr Speaker, I think most members of the House are aware of the fact that the normal approach is to invite the local Member of Parliament. The normal approach is to invite the local Member of Parliament to bring the legislation to the House. And I say to the, I don't know if they're called a board of Christ's College, but I say to the governing authorities of Christ's College, the fact that they have chosen not to do that has been noted in the House, and again, one would expect from people who see themselves as as important in the way of historical precedents that they would follow that history unless there was a good reason not to, and so that there was, I understand, no invitation to the local member given to introduce this bill, and that lack of politeness has been noted by the side of the House, and it will be something which I would expect at some stage the authorities responsible for the bill, the amendment bill, would like to explain to the House. But the major point that I would like to make, and I'll be interested in the views of the Minister of Education when she speaks on this bill, is the fact that it appears that along with other independent schools, there is no reference in this to the question of the day in education, and that is to the issue of national standards. And national standards, I'm told, are something which are going to run through to NCA level 2, and I understand that Christ's College, notwithstanding the habits of some other people, do offer NCA level 2, but we see within here no reference whatsoever to national standards, and the willingness of Christ's College to take on board what is seen as far-reaching and an important approach to improving the standards of education. And I want to know why that has not been included in the bill. Do the proprietors of Christ College think that national standards are so poor and so useless, and their school would go backwards if they had national standards? Because that is the view of a lot of schools. I mean, a lot of decile 10 schools, a lot of schools, very wealthy schools, are concerned about the diversion of their teachers onto this testing regime being implemented by the minister, and the fact that their standards will drop as a result of a removal of focus from teaching and learning. And I want to know, in her reply, whether she to the member who was promoting the bill, whether she has been involved in that sort of discussion with the proprietors of Christ College. I want to know what proposals the school actually has to do with the excess money which they have obtained, which becomes clear under Clause 5, new Section 4C. I'm very surprised that we've had no quantification of under either B or C, or for that matter subsection A of this bill, of Clause 5(4), and I wonder whether the member in charge of the bill has been briefed as to the quantities that are involved, and I wonder whether in fact the excess money that is available should be put towards, seeing the government is so keen on national standards, and I'll talk to my colleagues on the relevant select committee. It might well be that as part of the legislation it's appropriate to set up a fund in order to finance in Christ College the implementation of national standards. And it will be good to see whether that is a priority for the proprietors of Christ College, whether they think it is important, because the standards, of course, go through to year 10. They go through to year 10, so we want to know, and Christ College, I understand, has years 9 and 10. I'm not sure if they have years 7 and 8. Can the member who's in charge of the bill, do they have years 7 and 8, or just they start at year 9? So year 9 and 10, the national standards for those years apply to that school. Sorry? No, we've got a member in charge of a bill who's meant to be on top of the issues. She's the one who's been briefed. She's been briefed by Christ College on it, quite improperly, but if she's on top... But I must say that Nikki Wagner's answer to the question today showed a higher standard of understanding of the area of national standards that she was being asked about than Anne Tolley's did earlier in the day. So, but I must say that that's not necessarily a high test. It's not necessarily a high test, and it doesn't mean that she's coming anywhere near the ministerial standard. She didn't get it achieved yet, but she's showing potential. She's showing potential, and she's showing an improvement in a way which is not necessarily being shared by her front bench colleague, the Minister of Education. But I will ask the Minister of Education, when she does contribute to this debate, to explain why it is not important for students at Christ College to meet national standards. Why have they been exempt from the assessment regime? Why do parents at Christ College not get a report based on national standards in the way that those do at the surrounding schools? Why is there an opt-out arrangement for them? Are they considered too good for national standards? Is it because they are too rich that they don't have national standards applied, or what is the reason that is not necessary? And the member who's in charge of the bill, I'm sure, will explain why at the end of it. But I'm also sure that it is a matter that is appropriate for the select committee to consider. And I'm surprised that it's going to the Government Administration Committee. I should say. I think it's fair to say that at the education. Well, Well, they don't know much about education there. It's got a very good chair. It's got a very good chair, but then Education and Science has a good chair as well with Alan Peachy, who's full and frank on education matter. He should be the Minister of Education, and I'm sure that between Alan and I we could have got this bill sorted out. Mr. Speaker, we will vote for it, but there's no guarantee of ongoing support.